Digital 410 Productions proudly presents the What's the Scuttlebutt Podcast with your hosts Don Abernathy and Jeff Copsetta.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt Podcast, your favorite World War II-based podcast. And it's the final episode for the year 2020. Let's all get a round of applause for that. 2020 is going by the wayside. And it's a very exciting night tonight. This is the first time we've had this many people on the show at one time since the first time Jeff Copsetta and RJ Nevins were both on the show, which was the episode we did after the final production shoot for the Walking Point, the movie. And so welcome, everybody. Welcome, Brandon. Welcome, Jeff. Welcome, RJ Nevins. I'm excited to have everybody here tonight.
Yeah, man. It's awesome to be back.
Good to be here.
So
feels like we've come full circle now.
Right? We're getting into it. We're getting big. Don't mind me. I'm not ignoring you guys. I'm just trying to share us to the Facebook live feed so all of our friends can watch us. So we are going to do something very interesting tonight. Jeff and I were trying to think of subject matters that we really haven't covered on this podcast yet. And one of the ideas we came up with is the contribution from animals to the war. And so that's what we're going to do tonight. And everybody here has a specific thing they want to talk about. But first and foremost, how's everybody doing during the finalization of 2020?
I'm ready for it to be over.
Yeah,
2020 has not been a good year, but it's not been bad. I've had worse, but we're getting through one day at a time. Luckily, I've got two little girls who keep me exhausted, so never a dull moment there.
Yeah, man. Same with us. We're hanging in there. Things are good, as good as they can be. I feel like probably doing the same thing everybody else is, just trying to stay safe, trying to stay sane, trying to stay busy, trying to keep working. And yeah. And
I'm surrounded by Texans tonight. Holy hell.
Yeah, you feel safe. You feel safe, don't you?
Yeah, here in cold 61 degrees Florida. I just got done going on a quick run outside. Boy, is it cold. But anyhow, Jeff, I know you've been jumping at the bit to share the story that you wanted to get into tonight. So why don't you go ahead and crack this episode off and get it running, fella?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I wanted to tack on what those guys were talking about 2020. I mean, yeah, it's been really rough. I mean, I bought a classic car. I bought a DPW from World War II. I've got a son on the way.
Whoa, wait a minute. What was that last part?
What is it? What do they say? 2 negatives and then go with a positive?
So you got a son on the way?
Yeah.
Burying the lead on that. Congratulations. You haven't shared that news with me yet. I don't know if I'm the last one in the loop.
Well, I figured this is the best way to do it. Yeah, she's about, 12 weeks or so. But, with the testing that they can do now, they basically are like, yep, that's a boy. So, which is kind of what we were hoping for. So 2 boys, 2 girls. I got the boys as the bookends and stay young.
You'll have a basketball team.
Yeah, exactly. So that's okay. Nobody cares about basketball anyway.
Right.
So like Don said, this has been this is a great World War II podcast for a lot of reasons, because we get to cover a really broad range of topics and subjects. We always try to talk about our reenactors, how important they are around the country, around the world, keeping history alive and what we do. So it's always fun to be able to interact that way. So, we've talked about the importance of commemorations and anniversaries. We've talked about battles and different anniversaries, with that. We've gone into reenacting gear and things like that. But we want to talk about animals. I just kind of happened to mention briefly last episode that, there's some strange animals out there that people don't realize played a part in World War II. I think when people think about animals in World War II, I would think they would have, probably the horses.
Sure.
Germans had to use a lot of horses. Naturally, I know RJ's like, whoa, dude, you're supposed to say dogs, number one. But of course,
Horse was a very inspirational film.
And then maybe somebody with a little bit deeper knowledge would think about, over 1,000 elephants that were used to build the Burma Road. But one unique connection I have with a very unique animal is about 10 years ago, I got a great invite from a guy that was interning where I was working in Parks and Wildlife at the time. And they've got an exotic ranch, about 4,000 acres outside of Falfurrias in South Texas. And there was a particular species of animal there that was threatening to hit the endangered list. So we had to knock him down. And when I got the invite, I'd never even heard of this animal. And I wanted to kind of do some research before we were going to try to hunt this thing. And that's when I came across the scimitar horned oryx. Now, there's basically two species. There's a scimitar horned, and then there's the other one that's a little more popular that people may know as the gemsbok. Gemsbok is kind of a grayish animal with the white, really cool white features on the face and these big straight horns, whereas the scimitar horned is more of just a real white color with like a deer tan around the neck, and then these huge horns that go back and almost touch their rear. And it's kind of, it's rumored that it was the scimitar horned oryx that created the unicorn, the fairy tale critter, the unicorn there. So I don't know how true that is or not, but like I said, reading about it and understanding how hard it was to hunt this animal, and it was, even on a 4,000 acre enclosure, it was a difficult hunt in August. It was a 3-day hunt, got it on that last day. It cost me more to mount the thing than it did to shoot it, fortunately. So how important were scimitar horned oryxes during World War II? Initially they were native to North Africa, Southwest Asia. And now the largest herd is actually here in Texas. There's more scimitar horned oryxes here than anywhere else, which is interesting. I think climate has a lot to do with it. But early parts of World War II, Germany's starting to take over the French North African coast, and they're starting to push westward. And we had something to say about that. So, Monty and the 8th Army helps drive Rommel halfway across Africa. And they were a huge, huge food source, not only for the British Army and the American Army, but also for the Germans. So they were all but wiped out between that and the Civil War in the country of Chad. The scimitar horned oryx kind of became the main food staple over there. And I can tell you firsthand, it is incredible meat. It is really incredible meat.
That's one of the things that a lot of people don't take into consideration when reading up on World War II or any war, or any conflict for that matter. They think, they had K rations, C rations, and all that. But let's be honest, when you're on the front line, you're usually the last one to actually get that trickle down to you. And you can only eat so much Spam and crackers and all that. When you have a food source of fresh meat like that, and not to mention 3/4 of these guys in the time, they all grew up hunting on farms in the woods anyhow. And so it's probably a little nice to go out on a mission, if you will, to capture some food instead of trying to kill a human, and just get for momentarily, just get a little bit glimpse of going back to the way it was when you're a kid or before you got over there, and just to have that food, the protein, the energy that comes from the protein of that red meat, that cannot be underestimated at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And animals, not just a food source. There was a lot of working animals used during World War II, and I think this is a good segue into to what Brandon Vineyard can bring on. Also, a fellow reenactor, really good friend of mine, helped with a project that we're going to talk about here in a minute with RJ, but has looks like a really just following him on pictures. He was blowing my phone up when he was up there. He's got a really cool reenacting World War II animal experience that I think our listeners are going to love to hear about. Brandon,
take it away, Brandon.
Yeah, so, with the Tri-State Living History Association, and Don, you interviewed my dad back, I guess it'd be 2 years ago now, when you were down at the museum. So we do the 34th Infantry Division, something that's not really done a lot about. And just last month, we went up in the hills of Pennsylvania, absolutely gorgeous. And we went to a 1,600-acre mule farm. It's called Janus Place, and we spent the entire week working with mules and shooting some promo videos and working on a documentary to cover these beasts of burden that they're called, and telling the story of pack mules and how the Army used those through Italy. And it was an awesome experience. I've got experience, another country boy working with mules and horses here and there, but it was a great experience. And, you know, these mules, not to take away from the dogs. We all know the dogs did
You
an awesome thing.
You done ran RJ off.
Yeah. But you know, no one really talks about how important the mules were and what they were used for. I mean, you know, one regiment would need 200 to 300 mules just to keep them adequately supplied through Italy. And of course, you know, coming into the 1940s, you know, mechanized trucks, tanks, Jeeps were all the rave. And so the Army started thinking, we don't need all these horses and mules. Let's start getting rid of them. And in 1942, the U.S. Army only procured 20 horses.
That's a little short-sighted.
That's how confident they were.
Sure.
So, you know, of course, they went through North Africa, and you know, once they started intelling Operation Husky into Sicily, they started realizing that Dusenhalf's not going to get up that rocky mountain.
Nope.
What are we going to do? And so they started going back to horses and mules, and you know, basically, like you said, all these farm boys who grew up hunting, they took them and said, "Oh, you worked with horses? Now you're a mule skinner," which is what they called the guys who worked with them. And it's been a great experience, and I knew nothing about it 4 months ago. And the reason we started doing this, of course, is because our lieutenant, his grandfather went through northern Italy, and he was a mule skinner, and a mule actually saved his life.
Wow.
They were on a run to run some supplies some ammo up to the front lines, and of course he's on the lead side of the mule, which is the left side, and the Germans started shelling him, and the mule took the blunt of the shrapnel, killed the mule sadly, but my friend's grandpa survived, and he said that was, you know, we just wanted to start telling the story of these amazing animals, and that's just one story of many. We've been interviewing veterans all over the country for this documentary we're working on, and just about every single one of them will confidently say that if it wasn't for the mules and horses, they wouldn't have gotten the supplies they needed to win the war. And that's why we want to tell it. You know, as Jeff and I have talked many times back at the museum about what stories we want to tell, is everyone wants to tell about the guy pulling the trigger, but no one tells a story about what it takes to get the bullets to that guy pulling the trigger. So, it was amazing. We went up there, and Jana and Kenny Zimmer are two of the mule people up there who helped train us, and we got all the packs. We got some amazing reproduction crates. So we learned how to care for the animals, you know, brush them down, load them up, lash all the boxes to them, which was, you know, something interesting. It takes a lot to do that, but these animals are smart. These mules were just amazingly smart and amazing to work with. And I had a big Belgian mule that was about the size of a Clydesdale, and we got along great. And I always say, you know, he listened to me. We never had any problems, but I know he's well aware that at any given moment he controlled that entire situation. he could have thrown just a little bit of weight and flung me through the woods. So
Brandon, let me ask you this. So for other reenactors that listen to this, is this an opportunity that was unique just to the 34th Living History Group, or is this something that other reenactors could also experience? You know, could they call, make a reservation? Is it something that they do for everybody? How's it work? How'd you guys get involved?
You know, we got involved. It was crazy. Our lieutenant lives up in Virginia, started researching it and looking around, and he got a hold of one of his police buddies who just bought some land out in this area in Virginia we were in. And he had come across this lady, Jana, who is just amazing. And so Corey called her up, told her, "Hey, look, we want to start doing some videos on YouTube. We're doing a lot of things." And she fell in love with it and got all of her mule friends in the area signed up. So, I mean, people can go out there and ride them, but no, sadly, it's something that's pretty much unique to the Tri-State Living History Association. It's a great relationship we've built with her to come out, and she trusts us with our animals. And, you know, I think we spent about a day and a half training with them before we really got out there and did anything with them. So
that's awesome.
Well, you know,
we had a couple city boys with us who had never been around something that big.
That's even more realistic. You know, it's interesting. We all fans of the Pacific, we're all familiar with Edson's Raiders, but the Army had the Merrill Marauder. And I was recently reading up on that, and I'm in contact with a guy whose father served and grandfather served. I'm trying to procure that interview, but the Merrill's Marauders, they had a group of mule skinners because their whole thing was to be behind the Japanese lines to do sabotage in the background, and because of Burma and all the hills and the mud, they needed a way to move that ammunition around, all the gear, all the artillery pieces. And being a mule skinner is super hard work. Obviously, you're in charge of that particular animal, but after trucking around all day, if you get to a pass that the mule can't get through with the weight, you have to unload the mule, take the mule across the river. You and your other mule skinners have to pick up all that gear, put it on your backs, carry it across, reload up the mule, all the while trying to keep quiet so you're not heard by the enemy. Get to your bivouac for the day. While all the other guys are digging in, you dig in your position. Everybody else is kind of settling down. Now you got to go back, unload the mule again, clean it down, feed it, try to maintain its quiet. And like you were saying, with all those mules, you have all those mules that carry the ammo, then you have 2 more mules to carry all the food that you need to feed the mules. And so just by having them, that makes the logistics of the entire operation that much. And trying to keep those jackasses quiet, that's a lot of time and discipline, and that's hard work.
And it does. It takes a lot of time. I mean, you're talking 2 to 3 people to properly lash down and load and unload a mule. And, we did a lot of research, and we had just the old rope they would have used when they first did this. Now, I'm sure guys, as they always did, innovated when they got out there and found quick ways to do it.
Sure.
But when you're trying to tighten it down, it takes, 30 feet of rope for one box, and you're just lashing and coming across things and testing it and coming across things.
And all the while, this mule may be getting annoyed by bugs, flies, what have you, the environment. It may not, yes, they're trained to cooperate, but it's still a living being with its own mind. So it's got to be. Yeah. And kind of go ahead.
They had all the, they dealt with all the shelling and the bullets and everything else. And yeah, they're an animal. They're going to get skittish. And when you put a 1,500-pound animal in there, a lot of things can go wrong when they get spooked.
Just going to bring that up too. I mean, they're just as susceptible to be a casualty on the battlefield as the man next to it, of course, and what I would think, if a mule goes down, I mean, just like a deuce and a half, you don't have time. You got to get all that stuff off of them to exfil the area. So what I'm thinking is, as mules that have been killed in action, they would probably make really good dog food, wouldn't they? So maybe we need to start talking about dog serum then, huh?
Possibly.
Some glue. Make them into glue. Hey, that reminds me of a story that it was very influential to me when it came to like starting to watch or starting to work on Walking Point and things like that, writing the script and all. And there's a gentleman, Lieutenant William Putney, who was very instrumental in, the whole war dog training program back in the 40s. He's kind of really started it. He was a veterinarian who, signed up and went on and got assigned to the 3rd Marine Division and took his war dog platoon with them to Guam. And he tells a story about, he had a dog named Cappy. And you were talking about the donkeys and mules taking casualties and stuff. And this story that he told was just so interesting. And it's one of the reasons why he wrote a book called Always Faithful about it. And he talks about how they were taking fire and Cappy ran out in front of them, whether it was on purpose or not, and took a bullet for him. But it would have actually hit Putney had his dog Cappy not jumped out in front of him. So, I mean, to hear that guy tell the story, and, I'm sure people tell stories like that about mules, but it was definitely a heart-wrenching story to hear a grown man talk about that.
Well, yeah, just to follow up on the death of, as the Germans towards the end of the war started retreating, and of course, as the U.S. always does, we procured a lot of mules from, the Germans and from Italian farmers and stuff. But as they started getting pushed back, the Germans started realizing that we were using their mules against them. And we've read stories of guys who they would leave the mules tied onto the trailers and set the trailers on fire, or just shoot the mules and shoot the horses. And a lot of the vets recall stories, and these farm guys, that was something that really, really hit them hard, was coming across these burned bodies of good animals just so they wouldn't be used again. So it's same line. Those, these animals are just the silent heroes of World War II, and thanks to Walking Point and stuff, they're starting to get a lot more credit. So
there's a lot more people before us, yeah, for sure. But
we've mentioned Walking Point a few times. So for people who have never heard about this project, RJ, could you expand on that a little bit? And I don't want to put you on the spot on this one story, but I was hoping you'd share, and I think it had to do with Putney, about just from a veterinary standpoint. After we talked about where Walking Point was, do you remember the story about the fish and the diet and how it was affecting the dogs in the Pacific?
I believe so. Yeah, I think I do remember that. And kind of before I talk about Walking Point, I told myself that, and I'm so glad Brandon's on here too. I didn't know Brandon was going to be on here because with how crappy 2020's been, you three dudes, I'm just going to go in order of the way I met them. Brandon, if we would have never called you and we would have never got in touch with you at the National Museum of the Pacific War, you could have hung up on us and told us to go pound sand. And who are these filmmakers coming in here wanting to use our place and all this? Man, I'm so thankful that you took the time to listen to us and give us a shot and run that all the way up to, up the chain to get permission for us to come in there and film. It was absolutely instrumental. And because of that relationship, that's how we met Jeff. And Jeff just helped us tremendously. And nothing would have got done had it not been for Jeff. We had so many different things pop up on set that was, just needed some leadership there on location. And Jeff was there to provide it.
Well, this was my plan B. This was the plan B.
That was, if it goes to hell in a handbasket on set, that's it. That'll end it. And then Don too, buddy, you coming to help us on set the days that we filmed in Bokeelia, Florida, and coming up to Orlando with us for the AKC event and helping us there, and just your podcast and just the way you just kind of just jumped into this thing, like jumping into a swimming pool and doing a cannonball, man. You were just all in. There was no pulling back. So it's just good to see you guys, and just a heartfelt thank you to all you guys. It means a lot to us.
Well, isn't it crazy how a project like that can change so many people's trajectory in life? I mean, if it wasn't for that project you're working on, and if it wasn't for the museum, Jeff wouldn't be the co-host. As you said, you would have.
I'm sorry.
Well, I won't hold that against you too much. You would have had a harder time finding realistic locations to shoot the first half of your project at, and just everything just kind of fell in place, all based off of your passion that you had for the story and for the dogs of war.
What I'm hearing is I need to start invoicing you guys.
Right. It sounds like some billable hours in there.
Yeah. Well, ironically enough, RJ, Lou just texted me about something else we're working on. Literally just now. This is crazy.
Lou, for those listening, Lou Wagner. He played Private Markle. He was kind of the protagonist of the story. But yeah, to go back to your original question, Don, yeah, Walking Point is it's a novel that I wrote. It's a feature film screenplay, and we adapted it into a short film as kind of a proof of concept. To kind of bring more light to some of the first trained dogs in the history of the United States, and how they helped repatriate Guam from the Japanese. And there's a beautiful lady, Susan Bahari, who has a memorial that is on Guam called Always Faithful, and it depicts a Doberman sitting on top of this huge bronze block. And it lists the 25 names of the dogs who actually perished on the island during those, it was less than 3 weeks. I think they were there when they were repatriating it and coming through with the dogs. And so, it's the story that we wanted to kind of focus on. It's obviously historical fiction based on kind of true events that actually transpired. And so, we just wanted to bring that to light. And, with Susan's help, she also wrote the foreword for the book, and I'll talk about this later too, but she is extremely instrumental in the welfare of all dogs that have served their country in the United States. She's done some amazing things. I think she just dedicated during COVID in October up in Arlington, I think it was a military monument depicting all the female dog handlers, and this beautiful big life-size statue of a female in uniform, and she's bending down, and she's kind of kneeling down and talking, kind of petting her dog. It's amazing. And she's done all those around the country, and she's involved right now in a huge movement to get a national service dog monument up. Just for your listeners, if you want more information on it, I think the website is the National Service Animals Monument.org. And so it's a huge thing that she's trying to pick up, and it's not just honoring dogs, it's horses, it's mules, it's canaries, it's birds. It's an amazing thing, and it's going to be a park-like kind of walk through, and there'll be a monument for each one of these animals and how they serve their country. So
now, what was, for those who aren't familiar, what was the key role? What was utilization for the dogs, especially in the Pacific? Their key role was their nose and try to hunt out, encamped or in-placed Japanese soldiers, correct?
Yeah, I think, I'm not an expert or anything, but it's fairly common knowledge, I guess, that they were used for sentry work and nose work. Not so much apprehension and things like that, but they used them to, by the time the dogs got there, there were a lot of the Japanese soldiers that were still kind of hidden throughout the island. There were snipers there, and there were, embedded in caves, and the only way to really find them, I guess, outside of, various other techniques, was to use the dog's nose, flush them out.
And the thing that we've talked about before, and that's always impressed me about the story, kind of going back to Brandon's talking about how we had 20 horses because, as the war progressed and you say, we're in the need of these things. At the beginning of the war, the Marine Corps and the Army, they didn't have a kennel structure. And so they came up with this idea, someone did, and they brought to fruition. And as depicted in your movie, they needed dogs, and they needed dogs that were relatively trained and good behavior, but where do you get them? And as you depicted in your movie, citizens donated them. They basically enlisted their dogs to go fight the war, just like their sons were going off, just like their daughters are going off.
Yeah, man. And I tell people all the time when I'm trying to, explain the story is, the first thing I sometimes say, especially if we're in a pitch meeting or something, we're pitching the idea to somebody that, just imagine if you had a dog and you all of a sudden, for whatever reasons, what were happening in your life at that point in time, that you wanted to, donate your dog to the war effort, not knowing you would ever see it, knowing that you have children involved and, your wife and family members, you're letting your dog go. I don't know how my dog's part of my family. So
sure.
I mean, it's just a difficult decision. So I couldn't imagine that. It'd be like asking Sergeant Soares to donate Duke.
Good luck with that.
Would you do it? Yeah, I don't know.
That'll go over well.
I wouldn't even let my Boston Terrier go, not that they want her.
Well, it's something else to think of, too, on that point. I think there was only about 4 recruiting stations where they were accepting for the Dog for Defense program. It was like Virginia, Nebraska, Montana, and then California. So even to be able to do it, it was quite the process. I mean, you were committed to giving your dog up. It wasn't just, take it down the street either.
They had volunteer trainers training the dogs. It was an interesting time. It was brand new. So, they were kind of paving the road for everybody else.
There is
farmers are doing the same thing with the mules.
Really? Donating them?
Yeah. I mean, it all goes back to the American citizens stepping up back then and doing, between rationing and everything else, making that sacrifice of, one farmer might have a mule that was his moneymaker, and said, hey.
And even kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier about kind of citizens' input and so many farmers, 4-H was huge back then. I'm sure that 4-H rolled out a thing to the young farmers, the kids who were raising mules and all that. I'm sure 4-H probably implemented some sort of program to help train these mules up and get them ready to be donated to go off to war after they realized this was something they needed to do.
Yeah, possibly.
Real quick on the topic of RJ was talking about, in this book, Rising Sun, this is about the Nisi, the American citizens of Japanese descent who served in war. There's a chapter in here where they're talking about when they started rolling out the War Dog program, that they enlisted some of the Nisi soldiers to go work with them. It didn't last very long at all. I guess whatever their goal was didn't really work. But not to get too much into it, but in the chapter, they're kind of talking about how obviously everybody emits a different pheromone. And so I guess the hypothesis at the time is, well, if we can get Japanese American soldiers around these dogs, those dogs can get used to, the scent, the visualization of them and things like that. And so there was like a secret early training program where they were sending Japanese American soldiers to these kennels to work with the dogs to get them kind of to know their enemy, quote unquote. And it didn't last, like I said, but a few weeks, and then they redeployed them back with their unit. But in that book, there's about a chapter and a half on that, which is pretty interesting. We are getting down.
Sounds like it could be a movie.
Yeah, it could.
From the other vantage point.
We're getting down to the countdown, because anytime you have more than one person in a meeting on Zoom, they want to hit you with a time limit. But before we wrap this up, and what we'll do, if you guys want to hang out, that's fine. We can kill the meeting and restart it and go another 40 minutes. If you've got things to do, just don't rejoin the invite, and whoever's left will carry on. But before we go, one of the things I wanted to bring up, and I have a pre-produced thing I'll maybe play at the beginning of the next one. Did you know that D-Day, they were still using carrier pigeons over in France? I found this interesting article. It's talking about famous quote-unquote animals of World War II, and number 4 was Gustav. Gustav was one of the RAF's messenger pigeons during the Second War, and one of 6 birds given to Reuters news correspondent Montague Taylor ahead of D-Day. On June 6, 1944, Gustav carried back the first news from the D-Day landings in Normandy. He flew more than 150 miles from the northern coast of France to his loft near Portsmouth in just over 5 hours. You want to talk about slow news delivery system. Maybe that's why they didn't use them too much. But yeah, he reported it took him 5 hours to get there with a message that said, "We are just 20 miles or so off the beaches. First assault troops landed at 0750. Signal says no interference from the enemy gunfire on the beach. Streaming steadily in formation. Listing Typhoon Fortress crossing since 0545. No enemy aircraft seen." Interestingly enough, they don't talk about which landing beach that Gustav flew from. But yeah, 5 hours is a little long to get the stories back. And
did they have apprehension pigeons?
Oh, I'm sure. Well, nowadays I'm sure they probably had. I bet the Germans had falconers. They probably had falconers out there.
Yeah, to get his eye.
Which is probably, we knew carrier pigeons were used more in World War I, but I would imagine there had to be a platoon of falconers, right? I mean, that's never really came up in a movie, but especially during World War I, if a lot of your signal, a lot of your message has been carried by carrier pigeon, why wouldn't you have falconers out there trying to intercept them?
There is a movie about it.
Really?
It's called Valiant.
What?
Yeah, it's called Valiant. It's an amazing kids cartoon.
It's a cartoon?
Yeah, swear to God, it's called Valiant, and it covers that. And the villain is a German hawk.
Full disclosure, the only war-based child's cartoon I saw was Stubby, which was a great little movie about the little terrier from World War I. For you guys watching us on YouTube, Twitch, and Periscope, hold tight. We're going to we'll catch up with you here momentarily and rejoin this podcast, and we will finish things up. But hold tight, and we will be back momentarily. Cool, guys. I'm going to send you all an invite. Like I said, if you got things to do, that's cool. If you want to join back, we'll do another 30 minutes or so, and